Hello friends and welcome. 'Tis the seasoning of like starting to get out and be active again, right? We're in spring and it's starting to warm up, so there's that just getting out and trying to be active again, whether that's, just walking, biking, hiking, you name it, right? There's all kinds of activities you could be doing and bringing back in. Many of us are out in the garden and we're gardening. I've been doing a lot of gardening yoga in the sense that I'm doing things for the low back and the hips. But today we're going to focus kind of on that hip juncture. And the one thing I want to say before we start, food for thought, is when our hips are tight, right? When they're really tight, we overuse the spine. Because the spine is not tight, especially that low back, which is directly above, right? I call it the platform above the hips. And so you can imagine that if I've got really tight hips, I overuse my low back to do many things. And then the brunt of that ends up being that I often end up with low back pain, but also it can go to the platform below, right? If I have really tight hips and I can't go in external rotation or various things, that might happen from my lower leg and then tweak my knee joint. And so I could be having knee issues from tight hips as well. So we're going to do some things today where we stretch the hips, it's true, but I believe in stabilization and getting ligaments and tendons to turn on and then trying to stretch the muscles from that place, and also in conditioning the hips so they just become healthier all the way around, right? So that's what today is about. So we're going to start on our backs. Have your strap where you can grab it. Use a little bit of core on the way down and just start to warm that core up. Actually, I'm going to choose this side so that my microphone is closer to camera, so you'll hear me a little better, hopefully. Okay, so the very first bit is just simply bring your right knee in, interlace in front of the shin or behind the thigh, and start to hug the knee towards the chest. We've been playing with this a bit lately for those who follow me regularly, right? As I bring my knee in, my low back rounds. I want it to round in this instant. Hopefully the more we work in this way, right, the more we realize when we're rounding the spine, when it's in its natural curve or when it's in a tilt, right, and when to use those wisely. Go ahead and let that knee come away, bring the left leg in and simply hug the left knee in towards the chest. And again, if I grab closer to the knee, even if I'm behind the leg, I can start to bring that leg in and my low back rounds. I lengthen and stretch through that area. Bringing that down. This time when I bring the leg in, I'm going to grab more the shin, the mid shin bone. And rather than rounding the whole spine, I'm going to try to widen my spine down towards the ground. And take a breath. So I'm a little bit more towards having a natural curve, but pulling that curve down towards the ground through the middle of it. Bring that down, bring the left shin in, and simply hug that shin down. Pardon me. Leave the left leg there, bring the right leg in. Put your hands on your kneecaps, circling your knees together. And here we are massaging out the sacrum and low back area, something in that realm probably. Go ahead and go the other direction. Now keep the knees towards the chest and go in the opposite direction. Be the legs out, they move forward together again, and do that a couple of times, a few times. And notice that now we're more in the hip sockets themselves. Go ahead and go the other way. So just starting to warm those hip sockets up. And then go ahead and put your left foot down on the ground. Bring your right leg in a tabletop position, right? And I brought you in pretty quickly. So if your right hip is dropping down and the left hip is light, try to stabilize the pelvis. Move your thighs into an imaginary block. So the blocks, it would be, I guess, here. So you feel that corset turn on and keep your upper body out of it. So soft shoulders, soft jaw, soft everything. Right? Take a breath from there. Now I want you to keep your heel directly out from the knee, but you're going to go into what's called internal rotation. So if it helps you to bring your hands on your thigh, I want you to rotate that thigh internally. And I'm not moving from my foot, right? Because that's just tweaking my knee joint. Make sure that's coming from your femur bone. But yes, my foot does move to the right. Right? But I did this for years where I would work from the lower leg and I would tweak my knee, and my right knee is pretty sensitive because of it. Go ahead and come back to center. Now moving into external rotation. You can have it just above that knee to clear, right? But again, now my hands, I'm going to rotate. I'm going to literally try to rotate my thigh bone out and just notice what that does in my body. And come back to center and put that down. Whew. Bring that left leg up in a tabletop. So it's not as much about the core work, but we want core stability, right? So push your thighs into the block, find your core sit, and here we are. And now hopefully everything's pretty stable. So now put your hands on your thigh bone, and I want you to go in internal rotation first. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to rotate that inner groin forward and a little bit to the left. And, you know, you might not be watching my body. Hopefully you're watching yours and you're more interested. But what I'm realizing now is, boy, my left thigh has a lot less internal rotation than my right. Coming back to center. And I'm going to go use my hands and I'm going to externally rotate my left thigh, right? So that outer thigh moves forward and in towards my right thigh, I could say, or the midline, as I externally rotate without my hips moving, the pelvis moving, I mean. And noticing that. Come back to center and put that down. And let's go into windshield wiper. Walk your feet out wide, tee your arms out, inhale. Exhale the legs to the right. And inhale up, legs to the left. So when we go into this each way, one of the legs is in internal rotation, one of the legs is an external, right? So just pointing that out because we just worked with internal and external rotation. And then come on back to center, walk your feet in, grab your strap. Put the strap around the right foot, so I bring the right knee into the chest, put it around the ball mounds of the foot, and I'm going to push my heel up. So I want to stretch some of those big muscles of the thigh, right? So my leg doesn't have to be straight. I could leave it further forward to straighten it if I feel like that gives me more benefit. But I'm going to have long arms, and I'm going to push that heel away from me. I'm going to reach that right thigh forward to the front of the room so I don't shorten, right, that hip. That right hip. Another way I could say that is right hip moves towards the right shoulder for many of us in this pose. And hopefully you're feeling the hamstrings. If I pull my toes back down towards my chest, I feel my calf. Go ahead and put both straps into the right hand. Left arm can tee out and reach the right leg over to the right, left leg over to the left. So we're not quite in the conditioning phase, so you could extend the left leg, but I would say for right now, just let that left leg move over to the left and just lengthen through that right inner groin. So letting it be more about the stretching part than the strength. Don't worry, we will do plenty of strength in a little bit. You'll be glad you didn't do it if you were going there. Go ahead and put both straps into the left hand, right arm tees out. I'm going to move my leg over to the left a little bit while keeping my right hip very heavy on the earth, like it's made out of lead. I might pull my toes a little bit towards the head side of my mat. And if I keep pulling my pinky toe edge down to my hip, the strap helps that, by the way. Maybe that outer right thigh somewhere is stretching. Come back to center. Go ahead and bend the knee, release the strap, push the heel back up, arms at a 45, soft upper body. That's what we've been doing the past few weeks, right? Point the right toe and flex the right foot and keep doing that. And then lower down without the hips moving on 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Extend the left leg out to match the right. Pause and notice the difference between the sides. Feet on the ground, knees bent. Bring that right knee in and put the strap around the ball mounds of the left foot. Heel up. And again, I can let my leg move further away to straighten it a little bit more if that gets me more. It's not about a 90-degree angle at all here. I find with a straighter leg, I find more in my hamstrings, right? Straight arms, soft shoulders, left heel pushing up, and then just, again, we're just taking a few moments to say hi to the hamstrings. That left hip, make sure it moves forward, that thigh, so you keep all that space in the left hip joint. You don't shorten the left side waist. If I pull my toes to my chest, hopefully the whole back of that left leg is lengthening. If you have really tight hamstrings, they literally, the attachment point is in the buttocks, so it'll pull the buttocks forward and make the low back go into that rounded position. And again, if you have to live that way all the time, not great for the low back usually. Put both straps into the left hand, tee the arm out, right arm. Go ahead and let the left leg move over to the left, the right knee counters to the right. And again, don't worry about the strength part of it. You can drop the elbow down or what have you. I'm more interested in the stretch at this moment. From the inner left groin, lengthen through the inner left heel. And come back through center, both straps right hand, left arm can tee out. I'm going to keep my left hip heavy like lead and let that leg move over. Maybe pull it back to the head side of the mat just a little bit until I just feel that outer left leg lengthening. Come back through center, release the strap. Reach the leg back up and point and flex and point and flex. And you're going to do that without the hips dropping or moving. Tone the abdomen, right? Coming down on 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Extend the right leg all the way out and pause and just notice your hippies. Now slide the right heel back with the right knee wide and let the weight of the right leg lift the left hip. It's not, you're not trying to make it happen. I'm just saying don't be rigid. Let the left hip lift with this, right? And take a breath. And extend the right leg all the way out and pull that left heel back. Left thigh is heavy. Let that right hip lift if it wants to. And release that leg all the way out. Now we're going to roll over onto our side bodies. You can bend the knees, roll over, and push the ground away and come on to seated. And you're probably going to want blanket underneath your knees. So I start, because we're going to rock back and forth, a little further back off of my mat, and I like to have the long edge so that my knees come down to the mat. Have your feet about as wide as the short edge of the mat as if you were doing that, and then let the legs move over to the right. And you can kind of pause for a moment. So this is what we call 90-90, and I'm not quite in it, something like that, right? Where I have 90 degrees in my legs, and that lets me know the placement of my legs. If that feels too extreme, bring the heels towards the buttocks and go into shin box, and that's a little gentler on the hips. You do not have to have your knees on the ground or any such thing. It's just wherever you make it to, but I do get to lift my hip. I'm breaking down the first one. We'll start moving with it in a little bit. Coming up, moving over to the other side. So one leg is an external rotation, one leg is an internal rotation, right? So here we are again. It's a little more intense in this position. Now we'll move on the breath. So go ahead and move those legs to the left, inhaling them up, and exhaling to the, I think I said the wrong direction, to the left, right? Back to center and to the right. Now that may feel like plenty for you. You might add a little core. I just keep moving back because I move forward as I twist, right? Or as I twist my legs. You might lift your hands off. You can put your hands together at the heart or on the hips or wherever it feels comfortable. And now it takes a little more strength in my hip joints for me to do this motion. And that might feel like plenty for you. You might, when you go to one side, right, you're going to go ahead and you're going to try to lift up on your knees without using your hands. And there, so you have 3 phases. If you still have your hands on the earth and that's where you're working from and that's where your work is, awesome. Work where your work is, not where my work is. Maybe you are not lifting your buttocks, but you're bringing your hands off of the earth. Maybe you're lifting all the way up, right? So there are stages and places for you to live. Don't be aggro and push your body into something that doesn't feel right for your body. And go ahead and finish by going to the left and then come back to center. Let the legs come out in front of you, a little space. And then as quick as you can, whoop your feet, toes in towards each other and toes out away from each other. I like to put my hands behind me for that. And just let your hippies be loosey-goosey, like Jell-O. Like a Midwestern Jell-O salad with shit floating in it and whipped cream on top. Or probably Cool Whip, honestly. They don't make a lot of homemade whipped cream back there. And then go ahead and soften. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and come on to hands and knees. From hands and knees, move into a couple of cat-cows and just start to wake up the spine. And also notice that your pelvis is moving into tucks and tilts with this. Now you're going to come down onto your belly, right? So you're going to come into a half plank. We're going to leave our knees down today. My knees are a little behind my hips, but my shoulders are over my wrists. I'm going to reach my chest forward. Now I want you to squeeze into a block between your thighs, but I'm going to talk about a new one we're going to start to add in, which is hug your outer hips in. Squeezing the blocks in helps that action, by the way. And then bend the elbows and start to lower down. From your belly, go ahead and come up into a low cobra, feet down, thighs lift, tailbone down. I come up, I lift my hands potentially to make sure that this is my height, right? I want the upper back to be doing the majority of the work. We're not doing full cobra, right? We're doing low cobra for a different reason. And exhale, come on down. They're both beautiful poses. Pressing the feet, thighs lift, tailbone down, lift up into low cobra. And again, make sure it's your upper back doing the work. And come on down. So now from there, I want you to go ahead and I want you to bring your arms forward, elbows wide, your hands stack. I'm going to make a pillow so you can hear my voice a little bit better, but you can have your hands down and your forehead to the backs of the hands. You're going to bend your knees and your heels are going to point up to the sky. And I want you to walk your knees out wider than hip distance, no wider than the mat, we'll say. Bring the inside edge of your feet together, and then we're going to go ahead and let that right arch slide down the left inner leg towards the knee and come back up. If you need to see me, look at me to see it, and then do the other side. Left foot drags down. But then put your head back down, right, and go back to relaxing the neck and the upper body. And you're just going to move through that motion a few times, right? One arch glides down the other leg towards its knee and back up. So this is external rotation. I'm not rigid with my pelvis. I let my pelvis move with me, and I start to just kind of work through that SI joint on either side. Now go ahead and bring the feet down, bring the knees back in. Try to bring your thighs in till they touch if you can. Bend the knees, and now let your feet move out away from each other, but try to keep the knees in towards each other. The knees don't have to touch, right? But here we are moving that thigh bone into internal rotation. Keep that low belly toned up if your low back feels like it's getting compromised. And just breathe from here. Let the shins and the feet have weight. Try to soften the muscles around the hip joint, right? Because that's where this rotation is coming from. It's not the heels trying to get closer to the floor or the shins pushing down. Right now, we're trying to soften the muscles around the hip joint just as much as we can. And if they start to soften, the internal rotators, the external rotators are mainly the ones we've been working with through all this series, right? Then we start to get a little bit more range of motion. Really slowly bring those heels up and together, put the feet down, and then go ahead and put your hands next to your low floating ribs. Curl your toes under. You can keep your knees down or not. We're going to go back either through a half push-up or a full push-up into downward facing dog. Bend the knees a little bit, lengthen the spine always, right? And then maybe the legs start to straighten, but that's pretty secondary today. As those heels reach down, hopefully we feel the calves. As the buttocks bones reach up, hopefully we feel the hamstrings. Take a breath. Go ahead and walk your hands back to your feet. Hands on the shins, reach the chest forward. Hands on the hips, elbows up, come all the way up. So for the last piece, we're going to stand long ways on our mat, facing the long edge of our mat. If you know you're quite tight, you could have blocks down to put your hands on. I don't think I need to demonstrate that. Hopefully you know how to take care of yourself with that. But we're going to have our feet standing out wide. Our toes are turned out to a 45. Bend the knees and bring your hands to the ground. So I'm going to break down the first one real good because, I want to make sure you know what you're doing. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to bend the right knee and lift the heel and sit your right buttocks down towards your right heel. For some of us, we can't get as low as I am, and that's okay. Go ahead and flex the foot and pull the heel up. You could have a chair underneath your hands and just stay really high. You need so much flexion in the ankle, the knee, and the hip. Coming back through center, I keep my hips pretty low. I'm going to walk over. I'm going to let my left heel lift as I bend my left knee and sit down towards the left heel. I lift my right toes. I pull my kneecap up. I'm a hyperextender, right? And now we're going to try and move with the breath. Coming back through center and moving over to the other side. I lift the heel I'm sitting on. I lift the toes of the straight leg. Moving back through center, back and forth. And again, that could be a lot higher on a chair, and you could just be working smaller range of motion. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So now this one's in stages like that windshield wiper. This might be what you do in awesome sauce. Maybe You bring your hands up and bring them together at your heart, and you keep the hips low as you toggle back and forth from side to side, right? Especially through that middle part. Ooh, those hippies. Wow, is this conditioning? Now the last piece, I can probably only example it about once, show it, demonstrate it about once, because I did it in my own practice this morning. But maybe you go up in between, whew, and then drop back down. And you go up in between, and you drop back down. So there are 3 stages. 1, I keep my hands on the ground the whole dang time. 1, I stay super low. It's not quite as hard on trying to, muscular, I'll say, right? And 1, I come all the way up, 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 up. Again, I can't show it too many times because I've already done this today. And my hips are like, mama, whoop, right? And I would do that without my hands. Go ahead and finish off on whichever side you, the opposite of the side you started on. And then come through center. Walk your feet in a little bit. Turn your toes out. Sit down and bring your hands back to sit your buttocks down. Let the legs come out in front of you. Boop. Feel free to sit on height. Feel free to bend the knees, but please grab your strap. Put the strap around the ball mounds of the toes. Pull against them and lengthen, 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 right? Maybe you start to pull the elbows wide to pull the chest forward. Don't go your full depth. Pause a little before. And then check into a couple things. Are the heels still pushing forward? Are the buttocks bones still reaching back? And is the chest reaching forward? Right? So I have a long spine right now. I'm not rounded or folding in yet. Well, I'm folding a little bit, but I'm not rounding. And maybe you pull a little further in. Maybe you can get your toes without pulling your shoulders out of your sockets. And I invite you to do that if that's the case. And then yes, we do soften the spine once we find that hamstring stretch first. So once the hamstrings are fully stretched, I keep my legs crazy active, my heels forward, my buttocks bones back, today anyway. And then I round L5, L4, L3, L2, L1, T12, T11. You get where I'm going, right? And I soften in one little vertebrae at a time. And then, notice patterns that you have. Maybe you need to pull your kneecaps up so you're not hyperextending. Maybe your heels pop up and you need to push your heels down. Maybe your ball mounds of your big toes come off of the strap and your pinky toes round forward. Maybe push more through the ball mounds of the big toes pointing up. There are like 5,000 refinements, right? 5,000 might be exaggerating. But I just named off about 12 or 13, and I've got many more. Inhale, reach the chest forward, and come on up. Go ahead and release the strap to set up for the next one. Let the legs come out wide. If you have a long enough strap, you could still play with the strap around the feet in this one, right? But if you don't, it's okay. You don't need to. Usually you need like an 8 or a 10 foot. Shoulder blades down the back. If your hands are by your side body instead of on the strap, that's fine. The reason I want you to recall the strap is pretend it's there if it's not, and push through the ball mounds of the big toes. Right, I'm trying to see if I can push through the ball mounds of the big toes. My toes are pointing up. I'm pulling my kneecaps up, my heels and my thighs pushing down. Everything we just did, the legs are just wider, and this is really hard. You might really have to bend your knees to do this. Right? Maybe you do it from standing and you do a forward fold. From there, I'm going to pull my elbows a little wide to pull myself forward, and I might need to creep down on my strap a little bit. Maybe I get my pinky edge of my toes, maybe not. And folding in, reach the heels forward, the buttocks bones back. The heels are obviously on angles, diagonals. And then when I'm at my edge, I soften L5, L4, L3, L1. L2, L1, forget about the L2, it's not important enough, and soften all the way in. Keep those legs active today. I'm not saying 110%, but I'd love it if they were at like 70, maybe 75. I'm playing more with trying to do percentages. It seems to talk to a lot of people, and I see a lot of people who don't usually put much energy in, put a little more, and a lot of people who put way too much energy in, less in a little bit, which is a good thing. Reach the chest forward and come on up. And release the strap. Coming onto your back. Hug those knees into the chest. You can do either. You can hug the knees themselves and round the low back if that feels good. You can bring your hands more to the middle shin and try to widen the low back. And if you want to add a rocking motion in, feel free to add a rocking motion. Moving it into a twist, TV arms out. Knees might stay high for this, but they might need to move away or want to move away from the chest to come down, right pinky toe down. Turn the head to the left and soften. Right hand on outer left thigh maybe. Windshield wiper if you're like, no way. Bring the legs up a little bit, cross your left leg all the way over your right and come back in and let that right leg kind of pin and pull that left leg over. Inhale the knees up. Start with the knees by the chest. Let the legs come over to the left. Let the legs come as far away as they want to let that left pinky toe come down and soften. Ankles, feet, toes, hips. Head might turn to the right. It might not. Left hand might come to the outer right thigh. Don't mind me, I'm going to fall asleep over here. Now you might just stay like that. You might do windshield wiper. You might lift the knees and cross the right leg over the left and then let that left leg kind of pin and pull that right leg in a little more. Inhale those knees up. Come on back to your center. Bring those arms down. You can either leave the feet wide and lean the knees in or extend the legs all the way out to straight. Let's just take a few moments of stillness. And if you're someone who, when you do these videos at home, you're like, you don't do Shavasana and you take off, try. Unless you have a time commitment, really just stay here for a few moments. This is just as important as the rest. Soften everything from the crown of the head to the tips of the fingers, to the tips of the toes. Just a few more breaths, friends. If the mind gets busy, just keep on bringing it back to that breath. Remember, we're working with attention. It's a finite resource, but through mindfulness and meditation, we can actually gain more. But part of it is this retraining of the brain. Mind wanders off and it meanders, and we recall it, we bring it back. And at the moment we're coming to the breath or the sensations of the body. Bring the awareness to the breath and the body, any motions that you'd like to take your body through. While you're on the ground. Evidently I had a bunch I had to with yawns, geez Louise. But I always kind of feel a little bit like what I imagine it would feel like to be like a cat or a dog waking up from a nap. Roll to the fetal position and pause, take a breath. And when you're ready, push the floor away and come on up. Whatever comfortable, upright posture. Hands together at the heart, inhale. Exhale, bow the head in. Moment of gratitude. These beautiful bodies. These beautiful hippies. Namaste. May your hips feel not just open, but stable, so that hopefully that low back gets reprieve, the knees get a reprieve. Namaste, friends.